First, some good news. Unrelated good news, perhaps, but good news is the same. We'll see. February revenues, we were 65% above projections. It's good news indeed. $115 million above projections in that month of February. About $60 million above in January, 36 above in December, $44 million above in November, in October, and back it goes. Good news. This bill does not look at any of those funds as a way to fund this major tax relief, perhaps the largest tax relief in Idaho's history. I guess while I'm at it, I might also mention that this does not rely on the perhaps $234 million headed for the stabilization fund in the next couple of years. It doesn't touch the $332 million in 2021 supplementals for building Idaho's future. It isn't affected by the 660 some odd million that may remain on the bottom line after this year is up. I think February showed a different number than that of 500 million something. We're going to have an ending balance in all of our stabilization funds once the funds are put in of $790 million, which are huge numbers, and this bill does not draw from any of that. There's two components to this bill. One is a direct income tax bracket, straight tax relief, about $170 million of tax relief. It brings the top bracket down from 6.925 down to 6.5 for both individual and for corporate. That's about a 6% bracket reduction of that bracket. I might mention also that it brings the lowest bracket down by 12%. This goes into effect January of 2021, meaning you are already in these new bracket reductions as this bill moves forward. I might mention, we have 7 brackets. It's a lot of brackets, frankly. If you're an individual filer, you get the top bracket at about $11,000, $11,760. So we have very tight brackets. And in fact, because the brackets are so tight, nearly everyone who pays income tax actually falls in the top bracket. So this isn't about the rich. This is about all those who pay income tax. In fact, 97.3% of all the revenues we collect in income tax are gathered by those who drop off in the last bracket. 2.7% is collected by those who drop off in those first 6 brackets. So a very tight set of brackets, and nearly everyone who pays taxes will find themselves, rich or poor, if they're paying income tax, will find themselves in that 7th bracket. So going down to a 6.5 is huge for all of Idahoans. The second half of this is a rebate. We have about $220 million available. Again, not touching any of those funds we talked about, primarily. I am stretching just slightly against what the gentleman from the second floor had offered up in January, but by and large, tighten those numbers. About $220 million, they'll go out as a check for one-time tax relief. And those will go to those who filed in 2020, and I'll look back to their completed 2019 tax forms, and that they've filed at all, whether they paid taxes or not. 2 things will happen. One is there will be a $50 per nose, if you will, for taxpayer dependents that'll go out, or the greater of 9% of the taxes that were paid. Let me give you an example of that. If you have a family of 4, you will receive $200 in that scenario. Let's say you're a family of 4 and you paid 0 taxes at all. Well, $200. Let's say you're a family of 4 who actually paid $2,500 in taxes, a sizable amount. you'll get $225. Not a whole lot more, in the sense that if you wanted to look at this rebate from those who aren't paying much income tax as a sales tax rebate, it's a pretty strong sales tax rebate. In fact, at that 9% threshold that I'm looking at for the rebate, it'd require $37,000 in sales taxable purchases to accomplish that 9% flavor. So for someone who is paying less than $37,000 in sales taxable items, then that percent just goes up from there. The Associated Taxpayers of Idaho, I think for fun, put together their typical SPUD family that you see every year, and they ran this through the SPUD family. SPUD family would get tax relief of $300 in their income tax. It would drop their marginal tax rate from 3.9 down to 3.2. They would also receive a $391 in the rebate for a total of $691. I want to comment on the rebate just one more thing. This is a rebate. This is not wealth transfer. It is not a transfer payment. It is not a subsidy. It is not free money coming back from the governor to you. This isn't a CARES Act. This is your money that you paid in that we're trying to give back in the fairest way possible that we can determine. There are lots of ideas suggested. This seems to be the fairest way that gives the funds back to the taxpayers as best we can. So I think I'd be happy to stand for questions. I did not get both the handouts I see going around. Maybe I could borrow my neighbor's handout. I guess I can't use it as a visual aid, can I? But you notice how the impact on the lowest quintile is low. The first bracket for a single filer is worth $17. Once you pass, if you're in the first bracket, you've paid on average $8 in income tax. So it's difficult to provide a 12% decrease, right? And provide thousands of dollars in tax relief for someone who pays $8. In the rebate part as well, I want to point out again that this is a rebate. It is difficult to give a rebate as a percentage to someone who doesn't pay income tax, but it is very possible to give a rebate to those who pay in sales tax, and folks do. And so we're accomplishing that. You know, I like to take that same chart, I've seen it before, and turn it upside down, and there you're going to see the taxes paid in by those various folks, because this is proportional to the rebate that this is offering. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm worried this bill may have gotten to us a few weeks too late. I request unanimous consent to read from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
Without objection, the gentleman may read.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A state or territory shall not use the funds provided under this section or transferred either directly or indirectly to offset a reduction in net tax revenue of such state or territory resulting from a change in law, regulation, or administrative interpretation during the covered period. First time I read that, I thought, certainly that cannot apply to tax reform that we pass before we even get these funds. However, the feds further defined covered period under a later section. They said the period beginning on March 3rd, 2021 until the funds provided under this section are spent by the state or territory. Any state or territory that has failed to comply with this shall be subject to recoupment of the funds. While there are obviously some restrictive portions of the American Rescue Plan, it does offer some unique benefits that previous iterations did not, that could be negatively impacted by passing this tax bill before us today. The plan provides $1.2 billion that can be spent on water projects and broadband infrastructure development, which are investments I think this body is interested in making. let's say we come back in a few months and decide to spend $200 million on water projects and broadband infrastructure. We would distribute the funds and contractors get to work. But in compliance with the federal statute, we report this to the feds and they tell us to hold up. Since we passed a $400 million tax cut, they're going to claw back the same amount we've already dedicated to water and broadband. All of a sudden, we show up here next January with a $400 million hole in the budget or a bunch of broken promises to communities who were counting on us for new infrastructure. The responsible thing to do would be hold a tax bill until we can come back, perhaps in a few months, to distribute the most recent round of federal relief. By then, we should have assurances about whether or not we can do both. Right now, there is a letter outstanding by 20 attorneys general, including Idaho's, to seek guidance from the Treasury Department to find out if we can do tax reform and spend this $1.2 billion in our state. But we shouldn't be making a decision with $400 million consequences until there's guidance from the Treasury Department that says states may cut taxes without the feds clawing back that money. For these reasons, I encourage your red light.
Is there further debate? Good lady from 19.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be debating against this bill. This is just frankly not the tax bill that Idahoans want. I don't think it's even the tax bill that this body wants. There are so many approaches we could be taking, increasing the grocery tax credit so that everyone receives the same amount of one-time benefit. That's what we discussed last year when we were at a similar time in the session. Eliminating the sales tax on groceries, buying down property taxes so that people can afford to stay in their homes, or increasing property tax assistance. These are the policies that Idaho voters have been asking for. And when it comes to property taxes, voters are begging for help. In 2018, when we did federal conformity, it was a huge hit to families. So we created a child tax credit to shield them from a tax increase, but the value of that credit was too low to fully protect large middle-income families. We could be increasing the child tax credit to finally make those families whole again. We could be talking about putting more of this one-time money to addressing our backlog of maintenance on roads and bridges rather than putting those needs on a credit card or kicking the can down the road. But we haven't been able to have those conversations. The bill before us is not what Idahoans are asking for because it doesn't provide much benefit to most Idahoans and certainly not to those who need it. It is incredibly lopsided, both in the short term and in perpetuity. I think we learned what that word means earlier this week. I pass out some tables to show some examples of the impact on different kinds of households. A household bringing in $1 million a year will receive more than $10,000 under this bill. The couple earning $25,000 will receive $113. That's mostly coming from the one-time rebate. The ongoing tax cut for the household earning $25,000 is just $13 a year. There is a reason we have a graduated income tax that asks people at the top of the income spectrum to pay more. And about half of our households are not at that top bracket. This graduated approach balances out the regressive nature of our sales tax and property tax, both taxes ignored in this bill. And those are the taxes that hit people with modest incomes much harder. And so still, even today, with our graduated income tax, lower and moderate income people pay a larger percentage of their income in state and local taxes than higher income folks do. This bill will exacerbate that inequity because it cuts income taxes deeply at the top, but minimally at the bottom, and does nothing to address sales and property taxes. We ought to be putting more dollars into the hands of the working Idahoans who power our economy. When we do this, those families will buy shoes for their kids, have their oil changed, and get a haircut. Through a ripple effect, this stimulates a more vibrant local economy. We have years of research on deep tax cuts benefiting the wealthy, and we see that this does not create more jobs or economic growth. We also need to take a good hard look at the fiscal impact. This bill makes deep, permanent cuts based on us having a lot of dollars right now in this unusual time when we have had the benefit of COVID relief money and a growing population. And we can't expect the good budget times to last forever. It's often said that when it comes to maintaining a balanced budget, it's what we do in the good times that hurt us in the bad times. We will have more hard times in the future where we are struggling to adequately fund schools and other basic needs. And with schools relying on more than $200 million in supplemental levies just to keep the lights on, we could say we are in bad times right now. Same goes for the hundreds of millions of dollars in backlog and a backlog of maintenance on roads and bridges. I have been observing this body for a long time, and this body has only made moves to cut general fund revenue or siphon it away to uses traditionally paid for with dedicated funds. If we pass this bill and find that the cut was too deep, there won't be the will to undo it. It's already been mentioned that the American Rescue Plan has specific guidance against revenue cuts to prevent us from filling our coffers with federal relief dollars while creating a hole in the bucket of our state revenues. And we just need to take a pause here, because this bill alone in the first year could cut 1/3 of our relief fund that we could use to help rebuild our economy. We have not had the time to adequately weigh the costs and benefits. We should be looking at an approach that balances tax benefits for working Idahoans with education and infrastructure investments. And the only way to get to the conversations we want to have is to reject this bill. You know, there's a cynical sentiment out there that politicians are, just working for the wealthy and well-connected. Let's show that we are responsive to the needs of working Idahoans. I urge your no vote.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from 13.
Would the good lady from 19 yield to a question?
Will the lady yield?
The lady yields.
Thank you, good lady. Mr. Speaker, good lady from 19. I'm looking at your handout here that you passed out on House Bill 332. And could you help enlighten me, how much in taxes do folks that make $25,000 a year, how much state income tax do they pay?
Mr. Speaker, do I?
Yes, good lady from 19, please. I'm just trying to follow along up here. And anyway, you have the floor to answer the question.
Well, the value of the tax cut is, it would be probably less than $100. I think what it was also important to note is how much they pay in sales tax and property taxes as well. And I could get that number for you, good gentleman.
Would the lady yield further?
Will the lady yield to another question?
The lady yields.
Lady yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and good lady. So does this bill, House Bill 232, deal with property taxes or sales tax, or is this strictly dealing with income tax?
Lady from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, unfortunately, only deals with income taxes.
Follow up?
Will the lady yield to another question?
The lady gladly yields.
The lady yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and good lady. So I didn't hear a definitive number. You estimate they pay $100 in income taxes in the state of Idaho. My understanding is that folks that make less than this threshold don't pay any state income tax.
Do you care to clarify, lady from 19?
Certainly, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I mean, I'm working off the cuff on these exact figures. I have a tax calculator that I use to create this, and I would be happy to provide that information. I'm estimating that it is a lower number, and that's why when we make an income tax cut, it doesn't help lower income people all of that much, because more of their taxes are being paid in sales tax and property tax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe just a comment.
Well,
when we have,
you have the floor to debate.
Thank you. When we have something like this handed out in the future, I think it'd be very beneficial for those of us that do not serve on the Revenue and Taxation Committee to find out exactly what the income tax burden is for these individuals in these various income brackets. Because if folks aren't paying income taxes in the lowest income bracket, yet they're getting $213, one could argue that potentially is not fair. So it would be helpful in order to make that argument or to see a full picture in the future if we could have all the information in front of us on a handout like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 29.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would the good gentleman from District 21 yield to a question?
Will the bill sponsor yield to a question?
Certainly, thank you.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good gentleman. This question has to do with the corporate income tax portion of the bill, and I'm going to present some assumptions based on my understanding of the bill, and then ask a question. And certainly, if my assumptions aren't correct, please correct them. but my understanding is that the corporate income tax portion of the bill will result in a $17 million per year that would primarily benefit shareholders of Idaho-based corporations, and that out of that, about 81% would flow to out-of-state shareholders. Do you disagree with that? And if not, was that the intent of the bill?
Down from
Benefit
21.
out-of-state shareholders with the tax cut.
Thank you. Your number is close. My number was 16 million for that portion of it. We've always tried to keep the corporate tax and the individual tax rate similar. We obviously have S corps and LLCs and partnerships and other pass-through type entities, as well as C corps. And it's been the tradition, and for good reason, to keep those similar, so they're not distinguishing particularly between what kind of businesses those are. We don't want to set up a case where we're penalizing some types of businesses and favoring other types of businesses. Those are decisions that are made at the business level. Our current top bracket for corporate is also the 6.925. They both come down similarly to the 6.5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this particular provision of the bill causes me concerns. I think that reducing the corporate income tax rate is a laudable effort. I think it's something that the state should continue to focus on. I worry in the context of the overall bill, however, that we're not really accomplishing what Idaho taxpayers are asking us to do. That's been covered by other debates, so I'm not going to retread a lot of ground there. The bill feels, in my opinion, a little like we've kind of thrown some things together and we're just going to see how it goes. And I don't think that's the way we should be conducting Idaho tax policy. There are real needs in this state, people, middle class, lower class individuals who are struggling to make ends meet. As you can see from the handouts that we've received in this case, the benefits of this bill go mainly to those who are well off, those who, I dare say, are probably not really asking for tax relief. I think we can do better than this. I think we can be more focused, and I think we need to be more focused in our tax policy. We can provide tax relief. I think we can afford to do that. But it needs to be in the context of understanding we also have obligations to our taxpayers to invest in infrastructure, to invest in education, and to pay attention to where their tax needs are. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning on KBOI radio, the Canyon County assessor said that assessments on residential in Canyon County will increase 15 to 40% this year. In Idaho County, we're looking at 20%. So I want to compare what's happening in House Bill 332 to the significant increases in property taxes that residential will experience. And let's just take a 1% levy rate, just to make it easy. Right now in Boise, it's 0.0118.
Speaker.
Good lady.
I object. If the good gentleman would please debate the bill.
You've heard the objection. Please modify your, close the loop.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question is, or the comparison I'm going to make is whether this bill will compensate for increases in other taxes that our people are experiencing. And it is the basis of this discussion is that it does not. So the first thing you have to do is figure out how much of an increase in property taxes one would have on a particular income level, and then compare those property taxes increased to the value of the ongoing tax cut and the one-time rebate in this bill. So if you take a 1% levy rate and take a $250,000 home, that would be 50,000 times 1% would be $500.
Income tax.
Yes, oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So now back to income tax. So let's look for
Stay there.
$500 to offset
All right.
that increase in property tax, and it's not in this bill. And you can do the math in other instances, just by, say, using a 1% levy rate, you will find that this bill does not compensate for property tax increases that we're going to have. Therefore, this bill isn't addressing the principal issue that I think we should be taking a look at, and which I think many of us do, I think everybody here wants to take a look at. And therefore, since this bill isn't taking a look at addressing that, I have to vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? The gentleman from 10.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, I think pretty much 70 out of 70 of us probably have our minds made up, but just to put it out there for the record. A couple of things. One, with relation to the good gentleman from 16's comments. There's already a National Law Review article online that states that the state tax prohibition is the biggest attempt by the federal government to interfere in state tax policy in the history of the United States. We absolutely have been hamstrung in this state by fiscal federalism, the practice of putting strings on federal money to make us dance as directed. And we have been given a gift to the degree that they would actually go through with enforcing the holdback on us for doing this, which, by the way, is not backfilling. We're cutting back on what we're spending of our own money because we have the biggest surplus in the country right now. But to the degree they follow through, they have handed us the best test case in the last 100 years to take to the Supreme Court to fight the practice of fiscal federalism and to push back on how those strings might be attached and enforced upon us. I think that is a noble goal, even if it comes to fruition. Again, I don't believe that we are backfilling, but if that is the decision of the United States Department of Treasury, then game on. Secondly, it was remarked by the good lady from, I believe, 19, that this was benefiting the wealthy and the well-connected. Like the good gentleman from 21 pointed out, the top tax bracket kicks in when you make $11,000. $11,000 a year is wealthy and well-connected. To even compare our taxes to other states, you have to plug in a median income. You have to use income examples, because when you say that our top tax bracket pays this, but other states' top tax bracket pays that, states like California, you have to have 7 figures before you reach the top tax bracket. You're barely cracking 5 figures in Idaho, barely. And as far as the size of the rebate, those who, Mr. Speaker, if you and I were to both go and buy something from the local department store, and I were to spend $25 and you were to spend $300, and we were both to demand a refund, I couldn't rightly be irritated that your refund was larger than mine when you had spent more than me in the first place. I urge your green light.
Thank you, good gentleman. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly wanted to hit a few points that made my hair stand up a little bit. When we talk about tax relief,
That's
I heard
product that does that.
it's still standing up there. I heard us talking about tax relief and how this isn't good tax relief, and there's other ways of providing tax relief. I heard that several times. Well, tax relief by definition is for those that pay taxes. You can't provide tax relief to somebody who doesn't pay taxes. That's just a definitional thing that I thought maybe we ought to understand. We also talked about some other taxes, and then we went down this road of property taxes. And I'm waiting for my good seatmate here to object. And we started talking about what's not in the bill. Well, you know what's not in the bill? There's nothing in here that requires my kids to go to school. There's nothing in here that talks about my homeowners association dues that I don't like. There's nothing here that talks about a whole litany of other things that I don't like. But that's not what this bill is about. This bill is about property, not about property tax. It's about income tax relief. And so we could go on about that. But I will touch on property tax because there was a little bit of leeway given on that. Not $1 of property tax is collected by this state. Not one. We collect sales tax. We collect income tax. We're providing a relief for income tax. You can use your rebate check back for property tax if you would like. That's probably what I'll use it for. State didn't require or create that property tax, but by golly, that's how I'm going to use this money. You can use it however you want to use it. It's money back into your pockets. You can use it to pay your homeowners association dues if you would like. You can use it to pay for the gas tax, which I hate paying as well, too. But that's not in this bill either. This bill is about income tax relief, and it's a pretty good bill in my opinion.
Oh, there was no coda there.
I didn't finish with, I want your green light or however you want to do that, but I just assumed you knew that when I sat down.
You just left me hanging. Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 15.
Mr. Speaker, just to respond to that last argument, yes, the state does not collect a dollar in property tax. But in the last 5 years, 40% of Idaho school districts have floated $1.2 billion in school bonds and levies. And the state didn't collect it, but you got to connect these dots, folks. When you don't have the money to invest in education, and school districts are floating bonds every single year for operational needs, not for supplemental. Oh, no, I'm really being tired of being interrupted because of what I'm saying.
Objection.
I'm sure that the lady is going to allege that you're not on the subject of the bill, and I'm going to tell you to get back to the subject of the bill and make your point quickly, and hopefully that suffices the.
Mr. Speaker, I am absolutely on the subject of the bill because it is that you have to connect the dots to understand what this bill does. It denies money that could be spent on education so we don't have to have school bonds and levies every single year. And that's the argument that that the good lady doesn't want to hear. And so I'm.
Mr. Speaker, I object. He's impugning motives.
What?
Do we need to take a timeout so we can explain to you the concept of impugning motives?
Well, I'm being objected. I'm being silenced. So clearly, she doesn't want to hear what I have to say.
You're being silenced. You're being asked to stay within the bounds of propriety, which I get to judge, and you're pushing the line. So go ahead.
The consequence, thank you, Mr. Speaker, the consequence of this bill is what the money on the supposed tax relief, the money associated with this tax relief is denied to the citizens of this state, which includes funding the vital services of this state and its functions like education. And so, yes, we don't collect property tax, but when we don't adequately fund education and take money that we do have available and spend it elsewhere, that pushes that cost onto property tax increases. That's my point. And so this bill demonstrates zero investment in the money, the resources we do have to make sure we're performing the vital services that the state needs to perform. And that includes the net result being an increase in property taxes because we don't adequately fund education, because we're choosing to spend our money this way. Thank you.
Thank you, good gentleman. Is there further debate? Now from 13.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I just want to thank the gentleman from 10 for telling me that I'm now an affluent member of society. I appreciate that very much. So I just wanted to speak briefly on this bill. I've watched from the initial concept of a tax relief bill that we started this year all the way to this point. And I'm not quite sure what some of the members of this body want in a tax relief bill. Of all the versions of tax relief that we've seen this year, this is the most clean cut, this is the most straight to the point, and it gets money back to the people who actually paid in taxes. So I'm going to urge you for your green light. And
Thank you. Good gentleman. Is there further debate? Hearing none. The lady from District 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate against the bill.
You have the floor, and you've heard the objections, and with your skillfulness, you'll be able to navigate these waters that lie ahead of you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I do really think this does need to be an expansive debate because the price tag on this is gigantic. We're looking at $380 million this year, $170 million on an ongoing basis. The implications of this are so broad for other priorities we might have that I think we do need to have a broader debate because the horse will be out of the barn when this bill passes. It will be too late at that point to have an overarching discussion about should we give teachers raises, should we do property tax relief, should we do these other things. The money will be gone after this. And so we need to have a broader discussion, and I do think that the discussion of these items are extremely pertinent and extremely on point to this bill. But that said, I've mentioned many times, I knock a lot of doors. I love it. Since I started, I've knocked at least 20,000 doors. I hear a lot of things. I hear a lot of things about what people want. They sure want property tax relief. They want better schools. They want early childhood education. They want affordable health care. They want all kinds of things. They want affordable housing, you name it. The one thing I have never, ever heard them say is, you know what I want? I want $380 million out of the general fund that funds education. And if at all possible, I would like $9,000 to go to the people in the top 1% and maybe $78 to go to the people in the bottom 20%. In fact, if I ever proposed such a thing at a door, they would be dumbfounded. The person at the door would be agape and say, why in the world would you do such a thing? If you're going to be taking that kind of money out of the general fund and jeopardizing future funding of our schools and roads and everything else, why in the world wouldn't you make some effort to make sure the money goes to the people that need it? I mean, this bill, you know, it's been said before, but I mean, for those who fear that their government is only working for the wealthy, this, you know, really brings their worst fears into relief in the worst possible way. But it has been said that, you know, and I think the good gentleman who presented from 21 said it's very hard to get money to the people who most need it. Through income tax relief. When they haven't paid income taxes, when they haven't paid very much in income taxes, it's very hard to get money to them through a rebate. That is absolutely true. And I think the problem is that we have blinders on. It is true. If the only solution we're willing to consider is an income tax reduction, it's really hard to get money to the people who need it. But we can take off those blinders and get money to the people who need it. There are a million things we could do that would get money to the people who need it. It's like, you know, yes, if the only solution you're willing to consider is reducing the tax on Lamborghinis, it's going to be really hard to get money to the people who need it. But fortunately, there are many other solutions to consider. As was mentioned by the good lady to my left, there are child tax credits and income tax credits and increases in circuit breakers and, you know, direct property tax relief. There are so many things we could do that would get money to the people who need it. This just feels deeply tone deaf to me right now. I've been reading these articles about how during the pandemic, America's billionaires' net worth has increased by 40%, but people at the bottom are seeing skyrocketing poverty and are in the worst shape they've ever been in. I don't know if there's really ever a good time to do a giant tax cut for the wealthy that jeopardizes funding of basic needs, but it sure is not now. This is not the time to do a giant giveaway to the wealthiest people in society and jeopardize the services for the people at the bottom who need it the most while giving them nothing. Crumbs from the table for the waitresses who have lost their jobs and for the many, many people who have faced unemployment, homelessness, and so many crises in their lives. This is the worst possible time and the worst possible answer to the genuine problems facing people. And I've been told many times that this is a republic and not a democracy. But notwithstanding that, I do think there is a place for considering the wants and needs of the people. And this bill could not be more of an antithesis to the wants and needs of the people. And I dare everybody here to go knock on some doors and ask them what they think about a proposal that costs $380 million and gives $78 to the poor and $9,000 to the rich. With that,
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 15.
I support this bill, and I want to speak to making sure we define who's getting this tax relief. And it starts with my son, who's 18, who was, well, the school's closed last year. And so he went to work and he made on his W-2 over $11,000. So he's in the top tax bracket now. That's one of the rich that we're talking about. He's 18 and he made just over $11,000.
Mr. Speaker, I object.
State your objection.
I object that there's a mischaracterization here. The discussion was not on those in the top bracket, but those in the top income.
Potato.
No, Mr. Speaker, it's a very germane distinction.
I get it, and we've expanded, and we were allowing people to talk about opportunity costs, the things we could do if we didn't, and so please proceed with your 15. Our good lady from this.
I recognize that taxpayer is getting his fair share back in refund. I also want to speak to those who own LLCs. I fit into that. I don't think I'm in the rich bracket, but again, I fit in the same bracket as my 18-year-old son because we choose to operate our small family business as an LLC. And I believe that this package is a fair package to the kid who's 18, that's a brand new taxpayer. It's fair to me, who's middle-aged and owns a small business. And it's probably fair to people that are way further along in life than I am. But I'll be voting yes on this bill.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Good gentleman from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief. Just as we're discussing tax policy in a broad, with a broad stroke, as I've come to understand Idaho's tax policy, it's been described as the three-legged stool. You've got income tax, you've got property tax, you've got sales tax. And when you start chopping off one leg of that stool, then all of a sudden you're not able to sit on it, it's not balanced, and so it causes problems. What I wish for this bill, and I think it's what some of my colleagues are really trying to express, is that we would really examine tax policy from the position of the three-legged stool and not keep just chopping off one part of the stool. I would just really like to very briefly speak to the idea, we don't, as a state, we don't collect property taxes, but we do set the policy. And so the problem for me with House Bill 332 is that it is not taking the true comprehensive look that I think that all of our districts are asking for. They are asking for income tax relief, but they are also seeking some relief for their property taxes. I've had folks in my districts who have been asking for that for years. They're really hurting. They're looking for solutions, and they're not going to get it out of this bill. And I wish there was some bill that was out there that could speak to that. For these and other reasons, I'll be a no.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This might be the shortest debate today. And I'd like to just, what everybody has been talking about, but I've never had a poor person offer me a job. Thank you.
Is there further debate? The lady, yeah, I would have gone with her. She just stayed up. Good gentleman from District 31.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am supporting this bill. I'm doing so for a couple of reasons. One, I think that the Idaho income tax rate relative to other states is too high. I think it's important that we get it lower, more in line, more competitive with other states' income tax rates. Two, Idaho's corporate tax rate is too high relative to other states. This bill will bring it better into alignment. Three, I think that tax relief is important. I ran on tax relief in my campaign. I didn't run on wealth redistribution. This is a bill that will address tax relief in a meaningful way, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, good gentleman. Is there further debate? Good lady from 33.
Mr. Speaker, will the good gentleman from 21 stand for a question, plees?
Will the gentleman yield to a question?
He will.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman, for someone like me that doesn't understand tax policy like you, where do we currently rank when it comes to income taxes?
Gentleman from 21.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I heard a moment ago concerning the three-legged stool that he mentioned about the three taxes we have. Income tax is the long leg in a lot of ways, and so this is an appropriate approach. In the sweet spot of incomes, say $40,000 to $100,000 dollar range for taxable income, in the nation we're number 4 in that range. Hawaii, Oregon, no sales tax in Oregon, Vermont, who could have guessed, and then Idaho. California, who ends up a lot higher than we do eventually, beats the pants off of us. New York, New Jersey, they all have much lower income tax rates than we do here in Idaho in that sweet spot of income. And so this really is where a focus needs to be made, because we are, like I said, in those ranges. From a effective tax rate point of view, I'm not going into all the deductions and other things that might be available, but from a tax rate point of view, fourth highest isn't where we should be.
That helps. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Good lady from District 19, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, to debate for a second time very briefly.
Does anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? The lady is recognized to debate the bill for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to clarify a couple things that I heard. If you are a single filer earning $11,000 a year, you also get a standard deduction of $12,400. If you're married, you get a standard deduction of $24,800. So a person earning $11,000 a year pays 0 in income taxes. And then also to answer another question that came up, Idaho is ranked 44th overall for total taxes paid and 31st in the country for income taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Hearing none, will the gentleman from 21 please stand and close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to note, because it came up a couple of times, where the money is coming from. I want to assure you that this is money that we have already really in the budget. 110 of that 170 is coming from the ongoing funds that will be showing up in the tax relief fund. 110 might be an estimate. This year we're heading for $135 million in that fund. The other 60 or so was in the existing budget and showed up $55 million in the gentleman on the second floor's budget in January. On the tax rebate portion of that, 180 of that will be sitting in the tax relief fund come this July 1st. Now, it'll be more than 180, again, because of the good numbers we've been seeing, but it's called a tax relief fund for a very good reason. And so we're using it for that appropriate purpose of providing tax relief. The other $40 million that you make it 220 was also in the gentleman's budget, showing up as tax conformity. We saved $63 million by not conforming to one section of the new IRS code. And we're using those funds as well for tax relief. Money already called tax relief in the gentleman's January budget. One We're not backfilling tax relief with ARPA money. These are funds that are available to us now that we're putting forward to our taxpayers. I can't imagine the argument I'd have to make to say that I'll forego providing tax relief to our citizens because it might jeopardize federal free money coming into the state. That'd be an argument that I wouldn't dare make. My good co-sponsor, Representative Moyle, will finish the closing if that's
Well, the gentleman
your
yield.
liking.
Gentleman yields.
You have the floor to finish the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make it quick because I think we're kind of getting frustrated here and people aren't really listening. I want to emphasize the fact that over 50% of the taxpayers in Idaho are in that top bracket. But I want to emphasize something else nobody's talking about here. Roughly 40% pay no taxes at all. None. This bill offers relief to those 40%. I think it's fair. I remember as a small child, we had a job and we got paid by the piece. And the more you did, the more you made. And, you know, I worked hard and I had a lot more than the other kid. And the other kid still got a check and he hadn't done anything. And it bothered me. But I understood the employer was trying to incentivize him to learn how to work. And I did get paid a little bit more for my hard work. This bill accomplishes that. Those on the bottom that pay no taxes are going to get some relief out of this. It gives it to everybody. There was a lot of discussion, and it's starting off with the good gentleman from 16 talking about, he called it they call it the American Rescue Plan. I call it the Destroy America Plan. And his concern with this new Rescue America, Destroy America plan, what it's going to do and whether or not we can use that money for tax relief. There's none of that money in here. The state still hasn't even got those funds. It's a mute issue. We could go into some of the stuff that lady from 19 talked about, and I'll skip that, and I'll skip the gentleman from 29. But I would like to talk about the gentleman from 17. And we got off into this sidebar of property taxes. And I think you heard some comments by some of our good friends on the other side of the aisle, our good Democrat friends, about schools and supplementals and things like that. I agree that there's a problem with supplementals. But I disagree on why there's a problem with supplementals. You know why there's a problem with supplementals? Because you can have a vote in August where nobody shows up and a supplemental that would have died before passes. We've got to fix that issue. I also think that there's an issue, we talk about property taxes, that there's this perception that we should raise your income taxes to pay your property taxes.
Good gentleman.
I know. I'm having fun, though.
You are having fun. But
they were.
Fun is not fun at all unless it's fun for all.
Well, fun, I guess, is your definition of fun for all. Mr. Speaker, but I want to emphasize that this is about income tax and not property tax, and I don't think that it's wise to raise taxes to cut another taxes. You're just shifting the money. It's a shell game. It's not the way to do things. The good gentleman from 16 talked about the three-legged stool. My friends, you have a four-legged high chair. He forgot fees. Think about all the fees you pay and where you go. This bill addresses something that's fundamentally an issue in the state of Idaho. You have one of the highest income tax rates in the nation. This brings us down a little bit, not as far as it needs to, but it's a fair bill. Everybody gets relief. It's a fair bill. It provides relief for those that don't even pay taxes. As long as they file a return, they get a return. They get a check back for them and their dependents. This is the best way to give back all the extra money that we have now and do it in an equitable way that everybody benefits. I appreciate the hard work that's gone into this bill. I appreciate the debate. And I hope that from this debate, we've learned that when we talk about taxes, it's just not black and white. It's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of moving parts. I hope you can support the bill, Mr. Speaker, and thank you.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question before us is, shall House Bill number 332 pass the House? The Chief Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. The vote count shows 58 in favor with 12 against. House Bill number 332 is passed the House and will be transmitted to the Senate.